Dirty female cops instantly killed in jail. Let's get into it.
This case is shocking. Obviously, it's not every day that a LAPD detective is arrested for a cold case murder, let alone a female detective.
February 24th, 1986. Sherry Rasmussen's life was tragically cut short in her Los Angeles apartment. For years, the case remained unsolved, with police initially believing it was a botched burglary. Fast forward to 2012, when a shocking twist emerged that no one could have predicted. Here are some dirty female cops instantly killed in jail.
Wait. Oh, this is a collage. This is a compilation video. I thought this was just gonna be a story about one dirty cop. Oh, bro. Okay. We all hear about dirty cops once in a while, bro. Once in a while, we hear about dirty cops. To have 6 stories, this is gonna be good. This is gonna be a good one. I'm not gonna lie.
The bigger question was why Vicky White would have done this. Why would she risk everything in her life, everything for this guy? I mean, he was a violent offender.
In April 2022, a respected female corrections officer shocked her colleagues and the nation when she facilitated the escape of a male inmate from an
I remember this one. I know exactly what happened in this one. I'm not going to spoil it, but I know this one.
Alabama jail. What made
Wait, she was killed in jail? Bro.
this case even more sensational was their secret romantic relationship. Vicky White's actions and death were widely reported and became the subject of a Netflix documentary, Jailbreak: Love on the Run.
What?
Now, Vicky was a trusted officer with 17 years of service in the Lauderdale County Sheriff's Office, holding a position of Assistant Director of Corrections, which was a relatively senior role. Now, she had a good reputation with her department and was known to be a trusted officer by her colleagues. But Vicky had other plans to betray her oath of service, having fallen to Casey White, a convicted murderer with a violent past. Now, White had a long criminal history, awaiting trial for additional crimes, including murder and kidnapping. He was described as a violent and dangerous individual. Investigations would later show that Vicky had been in regular contact with Casey for months before the escape, completely under his influence. Despite his dangerous reputation, though, she chose to risk everything: career, freedom, and ultimately her life, all for him. Leading up to the escape, Vicky exhibited unusual behavior. She sold her home, withdrew large sums of money, and made plans that, in hindsight, hinted at what was coming. She ignored the moral and professional obligations of her position.
It's because of that loneliness, bro. I swear to God, loneliness is such a bad thing, dude. It makes you do crazy that you thought that you would never do in your life. I guarantee you, well, she can't even regret it now because, but brother, I guarantee you the moment that she got caught, she definitely regretted everything that she decided to do.
That choosing to assist a dangerous individual in his escape from justice. In interviews with law enforcement, it was suggested that Vicky White had become emotionally manipulated by Casey White, who was known to have charismatic and manipulative tendencies. On April 29th, she orchestrated Casey's release under the pretense of a court-ordered mental health evaluation. Instead of returning, they abandoned their transport vehicle and vanished, sparking a nationwide manhunt. For 11 days, authorities pursued the fugitives until they were tracked down in Evansville, Indiana. Their run came to a dramatic end when police cornered them during a high-speed chase. Their vehicle crashed and took a tragic turn. On the 9th of May, 2022, the lovers were apprehended. However, in the moments before, Vicky shot herself in the head and later died in the hospital from her injuries.
Wait, I forgot about that. I did not remember that whatsoever. So she just ended up taking her own life. I'm not gonna say that it's understandable because what she did isn't even very understandable at all. Like, she did it because she was lonely and she got manipulated into thinking that this prisoner was gonna give her the life that she never had. It's like she had a good life, she had a good job. The job that she did have comes with a lot of stress, a lot of tension, but damn, that's insane.
Death would add a tragic and shocking element to the story, raising even more questions about her motivations and the extent of her involvement in that escape. Casey White was charged with her murder under Alabama's felony murder rule, but the charge was dropped when he pled guilty to escape on the 5th of May. Vicky's story remains a tragic example of how personal emotions can cloud judgment, leading even the most trusted individuals down a dark and irreversible path.
But nobody ever thinks about how often people just go against their own morals because they met somebody that they shouldn't have met. Like, it's a very normal thing. It sucks, but it is what it is. She had a bad lapse in judgment.
Also breaking at this hour, former NOPD officer Antoinette Frank, who is scheduled to be executed, was denied clemency today.
On the night of March 4th, 1995, what was meant to be a quick cash grab at Kim Ann's restaurant in New Orleans took a deadly turn. A robbery spirals into a nightmare, leaving a trail of blood and betrayal. But this wasn't just any crime. Among those involved would be a police officer, bound not only by duty, but by a secret romance. Antoinette Frank was born on March 30th, 1971 in New Orleans, Louisiana. She applied to the New Orleans Police Department, or NOPD, in early 1993, but her journey into law enforcement was far from smooth. According to author Chuck Hustmeyer, she lied all throughout her application and even failed 2 psychiatric evaluations. One psychiatrist, Philip Scuria, strongly advised against hiring her.
How did she become a police officer failing 2 psychiatric tests? How did that just fall through the cracks? That doesn't just happen.
However, the NOPD was desperate for officers at the time. The department was understaffed, losing cops faster than they could recruit replacements, and struggling with low wages compared to similar cities. Matters were even worse because a residency requirement that limited the pool of applicants didn't change until 2014. So despite all her red flags, Antoinette was given another chance, officially hired on February 7th, 1993, and graduated from that academy by February 28th. Now, she ranked near the top of her class, but her time on the force would be largely unimpressive. Fellow officers saw her as shy, indecisive, and unprepared for real police work. Some even questioned her mental stability, and by August 1993, her superiors were already considering sending her back for additional training, even though she occasionally received praise, even winning Officer of the Month awards. On the night of March 4th, 1995, Antoinette and her accomplice, Rogers Lacaze, returned for the 3rd time to Kim An, a Vietnamese restaurant in East New Orleans, a small family-owned business where she worked off-duty security. As the employees would clean up the restaurant, Chow Vu went into the kitchen to count money and entered the dining room to pay Ronald Austin Williams II. Now, Williams was the colleague of Antoinette who'd been working security that night to supplement his policeman's salary. As Chow walked to pay him, she spotted Antoinette approaching the restaurant. She'd already stopped by twice that evening to grab leftover food, but this time, her intentions were far more sinister. Chow felt something off because earlier that night, Antoinette had struggled to find the front door key. Now, she came back again. Sensing danger, Chow hurried to the kitchen and hid the money in a microwave. Using the key she stole, Antoinette let herself in, past Williams, and forcefully pushed Chow, her brother Kwok, and another employee toward the kitchen. Williams, sensing trouble, followed, only to be ambushed, as Lacaze shot him in the neck, paralyzing him instantly. As Williams collapsed, Lacaze continued firing, killing him in cold blood. Meanwhile, Chow, Kwok, and their employee managed to slip into a walk-in cooler, shutting off the light to hide. In the dining room, their siblings, Ha and Quang Vu, were at the mercy of Antoinette and Lacaze, who were demanding money. Antoinette pistol-whipped 17-year-old Quang when he hesitated to answer. After getting the cash out of the microwave, she turns to 21-year-old Ha, who was kneeling and pleading for her life, and shot her 3 times without hesitation.
Why did she even become a cop? Was it like a power trip thing? Like, was she just invested in the power? Because this is crazy. This is beyond dirty cop. This is like criminal cop turned to 1,000.
Before turning the gun on Quang and fired 6 rounds at him. Once the killers fled, Chow desperately tried calling 911, but the thick walls of the cooler blocked her signal. Acting quickly, Kwok ran out the back door to a friend's house and made that emergency call. Meanwhile, Antoinette, aware that there were survivors, heard the 911 dispatch over her police radio. Realizing she had unfinished business, she borrows a patrol car and rushes back to the restaurant, pretending to be a responding officer. She enters through the back, planning to silence Chow and Kwok for good. But as Chow spots her, she bolts for the front door, running straight into arriving officers. Through tears, Chow points at Antoinette, shouting that she was the killer. Both Antoinette and Lacaze were arrested that night after hours of questioning.
This is ridiculous, bro. I could have never. This is a situation where police officers immediately just have to lock down. Like, they have to immediately arrest that officer, because would she have just pulled out her gun and started shooting, she could have actually gotten away. Obviously, they would have went on a chase, but she could have gotten away for the moment, which is just insane to think about.
Antoinette confessed, making her the first New Orleans police officer ever charged with murdering a fellow officer. Antoinette's involvement in this robbery was calculated and premeditated. She used her knowledge of law enforcement to ensure that the heist would be executed smoothly, thinking that her badge would allow her to get away with it. However, once the robbery began, things quickly went awry.
Yeah, they
In the midst of
escalated
the
way
chaos,
too quickly.
Antoinette was believed to have given the order to kill the victims to ensure that there would be no witnesses left behind. They tried to cover up their crime by leaving as quickly as possible, but the robbery turned into a bloody scene that was impossible to ignore. Detective Eddie Rance, who led this investigation, later described Antoinette as the coldest person he'd ever encountered. Investigators believed revenge played a key role, since Antoinette thought Williams had been shortchanging her hours at the restaurant and wanted payback. The murder trial began in 1995, and after a lengthy one, she was placed on death row at Louisiana State Penitentiary.
Hell yeah, you just walked into a restaurant and started killing mad people. It wasn't a ton of people, but it's a good amount of people, bro. Everybody working there, no witnesses. Like, that's just a crazy mindset.
Also known as Angela Prison, where she remains to this day, experiencing a fate worse than death. Despite her conviction, Antoinette has filed multiple appeals, claiming her innocence, but each one has been denied. Her story continues to capture the attention of the public, and the crime she committed has left a permanent stain on the reputation of the NOPD.
Yeah, of course, because you just hired a complete
On a chilling
psychopath.
February
That's what
morning,
you did.
In 1986, Sherry Rasmussen's life was tragically cut short in her home in Van Nuys, Los Angeles, in what seemed like a violent struggle. The LAPD were baffled at Sherry's death, as they thought it was just another botched burglary gone wrong, with no clear suspect in sight. However, her father had a gut feeling that wouldn't just go away.
After Stephanie graduated from UCLA, she joined the LAPD in the early 1980s.
She seemed to excel and do well in specialized assignments, but it was always competitive.
Stephanie Lazarus is a notorious figure in the LAPD, whose case is famous for involving police corruption and a cold-blooded murder. Unlike many other cases of police corruption, Lazarus's story stands out because her crimes were personal, stemming from jealousy and obsession rather than a connection to criminal enterprises or corruption tied to drugs and cartels. Now, she was a highly regarded detective in the LAPD, having worked for years with the department's robbery homicide division. She was known for her strong work ethic and was generally respected by her colleagues. But her involvement in a high-profile case would later reveal a hidden dark side. The victim of Lazarus's crime was Sherry Ray Rasmussen, the wife of Lazarus's ex-boyfriend, John Rutan. John, a mechanical engineering major from San Diego, and Stephanie Lazarus, a political science student from Simi Valley, casually dated at UCLA between 1978 to 1982. They were both into sports, with Stephanie playing on the junior varsity women's basketball team, but their relationship wouldn't be anything serious to John, who viewed their interactions as necking and fooling around. Stephanie, however, was much more invested and did things like steal his clothes while he showered and take pictures of him in his underwear while he slept. The physical relationship was brief, and they only
That's why you can't play with a girl heart. They will chew you up. Ain't that right? That's right, babe. Okay, cool.
had sex after John graduated in 1982. John later had met Sherry Rasmussen, a bright, ambitious nurse who worked at Glendale Adventist Medical Center. Now, their relationship deepened, and they eventually became engaged in 1985. Now this didn't sit well with Stephanie, who had secretly hoped to rekindle things with John. After learning about his serious relationship with Sherry, Stephanie became distraught. She even wrote to John's mother, expressing how heartbroken she was.
That's insane. Sending mail to the mother of your ex-boyfriend and that ex-boyfriend just got married to somebody else is next level psychopath shit, okay? He don't want you. Get over it.
She later went to John's apartment, and the two did have sex, with John calling it a way to give Stephanie closure.
Oh.
But you know things didn't end there, because Stephanie continued to visit the couple, even bringing skis to John's place, causing Sherry to kind of feel uncomfortable and fearful. Sherry confided to her father that she felt Stephanie was stalking her. Tragically, she was right. On the morning of February 24th, 1986, John Rutan left for work, like usual, from their condo in Van Nuys. Sherry, his fiancée, was supposed to give a motivational speech at work that day. But she wasn't a fan of that idea, so she tells John she might call in sick. Around 9:45 a.m., a neighbor noticed the garage door.
That's a bad day to call in sick. I'm not gonna lie to you. That is a terrible day to call in sick. You gave her her opportunity. You opened the door for her.
Door was open, but no car was in sight. 15 minutes later, John tried calling home, but got no answer. Sherry's sister also tried to call, but had no luck reaching her. By noon, two men, who the neighbor thought were gardeners, brought over Sherry's purse to him. A maid nearby reported hearing what sounded like a fight around 12:30 p.m., and then something falling. When John returned home that evening, he noticed the garage door was still open, and there was broken glass on the driveway. The BMW he bought Sherry as an engagement gift was gone. Inside, he found Sherry dead on the living room floor. Now, the scene showed signs of a struggle, and there were defensive wounds. A bite mark on her arm was later swabbed for DNA. She'd been shot multiple times in the chest and head, and her death was initially thought to be a robbery gone wrong. The LAPD, including Lazarus herself, investigated the case, but no one was able to solve this crime for over 20 years.
Oh my God. Well, you know what? When the murderer is also working the case, it's like, how do you expect to even find the evidence? She could just move everybody away from actual evidence. That's just what happens, especially if she wasn't inside of the criminal database. But at the same time, like, I don't know, the teeth mark, she has to get fingerprinted in order to even become a cop. It's kind of weird that that went into a cold case for 20 years.
It's incredible how Detective Lazarus snuck onto that case, which allowed her to steer the investigation away from herself and her own connections. She went as far as to make misleading statements to colleagues, interfering with the investigation to prevent suspicion. The case went cold for many years, but in 2009, the LAPD decided to revisit old cases, and new forensic techniques came into play. DNA evidence, like the bite mark on Rasmussen's body, was re-examined and would ultimately link Stephanie Lazarus to the crime.
Throughout the years, the stuff that the cops use gets better and better. It's gonna happen. Most people get caught later down the line because of new technology.
The breakthrough was when they discovered the bite mark matched Lazarus's dental impression, which was archived in police records.
I mean, if you guys are claiming that I'm a suspect, then, you know, I got a problem with, you know, with that. Okay? So, you know, if you're
they don't care if you have a problem with it.
I'm a suspect. Well, now I got a problem with, you know, now you're accusing me of this? Is that what you're saying?
We're trying to figure out what happened, Stephanie.
Well, I'm just saying, you know, do I need to get a little...
Listen, if people start to stutter up this bad, I understand that you could be nervous, but why would you be nervous if you weren't a suspect? And that's why people get caught inside of interrogation rooms, because they don't know how to shut up. They start acting very suspiciously. That's how you get caught 101. Take a course directly from her. Look at her dumbass face right now. Look at how goofy she looks.
Lori, if you're accusing me of this...
Lazarus was arrested in 2009, charged with first-degree murder. Her conviction was in 2012, and it was clear that the motive was rooted in her personal obsession with her former lover. During the trial, we saw that she harbored resentment toward Rasmussen, and when she was killed, Lazarus was the only person who stood to gain from her death. Those obsessive feelings led her to commit murder to what she saw as an obstacle to her happiness.
Stephanie Lazarus was sentenced to 27 years to life for the murder of Sherry Rasmussen. She is currently being held inside the maximum security unit of the Central California Women's Facility.
She would have access to important details, hindering the case's resolution for years. After being convicted, Lazarus was sentenced to 27 to life, without the possibility of parole. As of now, she's hanging out at a California state prison.
Don't commit a crime that you can't do the time for. It's like they said in SpongeBob, if you can't do the time, don't do the crime. Except this time, she ain't get out, I'm not gonna lie.
Everyone was sort of in disbelief.
This is not the Vicky White we know, by any stretch of the imagination.
At the start of reporting the story, I assumed that Vicky was in some way the victim.
In 2021, a case had captivated South Africans, where a former police officer was sentenced to life in prison for murdering 5 relatives and a boyfriend to cash in on insurance claims, and then would finally be caught after someone she hired to kill her sister went to the police.
What?
Nomia Rosemary Dlovu was born in 1978 in Bushbuck Ridge, in Mpumalanga, one of the surrounding villages. She attended primary and high school here until she moved to Johannesburg in search of greener pastures, where she later joined the South African Police Service, or SAPS, and went to training. Now, she seemed like a respected member of SAPS working at the Tembisa police station, and would eventually earn the rank of sergeant. However, behind the uniform, she had a dark side, one fueling her gambling addiction that often made her dodge loan sharks.
I'm not gonna lie, I can agree with her on gambling addiction, but I ain't got no loan sharks. Look, I always say that I'm addicted to gambling, but I'm really not, because I don't allow myself to go into a bad financial situation because of gambling, and nobody ever should. I understand that a lot of people have that problem where they actually owe a lot of people money, but that could never be me. I am very smart financially. I have to be.
And skip work.
His two was one thing. The bigger question was why Vicky White would have done this. Why would she risk everything in her life, everything for this?
In 2012, Rosemary began her killing spree with her cousin, Madala Witness Homu, who was found brutally beaten to death in Olifantsfontein. For his death, she had collected over 131,000 rand in insurance policies.
Oh my God, for insurance policies? This happens all the time, bro. Insurance fraud is such a big thing when it comes to murders because people get paid out for all of those deaths. You'll see it a lot with like wives killing husbands, husbands killing wives. It's just crazy to me that you did that for money. It's disgusting.
In June 2013, tragedy struck again, this time much closer to home, as Nadolvu's sister, Audrey Somisa Dlovu, was murdered while staying at her house, having been poisoned and then strangled. The insurance payout, a staggering 717,421,017 cents. That same month, her niece, Zanele Motha, was beaten to death, adding another 119,840 to her growing fortune. By October 2015, she turned on her own boyfriend and father of her child, Maurice Mabasa. He was found dumped in Olifantsfontein, stabbed a horrifyingly 76 times. Rosemary had taken out multiple death policies.
Nah, man. Nah. I understand the poisoning. I understand that when it comes to these insurance policies because you don't want to make... Well, she beats them after, so that's even worse. I don't know, man. It's crazy that you'll do this to people who love you and who you love just so that you could get some money so that you could go gamble. Or you could pay loans off. Like, this is insane.
Policies in his name, cashing in over 131,000 rand. By April 2017, she moves on to her nephew, Mayeni Mashaba. He'd met up with her the day before his murder and was later found dead in Olifantsfontein. Her final known victim, though, would be another nephew, Brilliant Mashego, Audrey's son. He was last seen alive with Rosemary on January 22, 2018, in Bushbuck Ridge. 2 days later, his body would be found. In court, she admitted to having taken out funeral policies on him as well. In most cases, she hired hitmen to carry out these murders, but in 2013, she had poisoned and strangled her sister Audrey herself. This all came to an end after she had approached someone to kill another one of her sisters, Joyce. and Joyce's 5 children in March 2018.
Whoa, the children? You can't even take a policy out on them.
Strangled her sister Audrey herself. This all came to an end after she had approached someone to kill another one of her sisters, Joyce, and Joyce's 5 children in March 2018, instructing them to burn them alive inside their home. Unknowingly, the man she hired informed the police, who then arranged a sting operation to record her talking about those plans. They recorded the whole conversation, leading to her arrest and the shocking unraveling of one of South Africa's most chilling murder cases. Who knows how far she would have kept going if she didn't get caught. The Lovu was found guilty of the attempted murder of her mother, Maria Mshwana, as well as insurance fraud after having pocketed an estimated 1.4 million rand, or $95,000.
You did all that for 95,000? Are you kidding me? You just murked so much of your family, and you thought that you were gonna keep on getting away with this shit? Yo, oh my God, that's ridiculous.
A case that reads like a Hollywood movie, but it is very real and it is tragic. A case that brought international intrigue. Where was it?
Over the course of a 3-month trial, she maintained her innocence, accusing many of the 50 state witnesses of lying. But the prosecution showed that she was with most of her victims before their deaths, and how she had benefited afterwards.
That's ridiculous, dude.
On February
That's
22nd,
terrible.
28th.
I'm not gonna lie, that case might be one of the worst ones that I've heard of. I'm not gonna lie. We're gonna keep moving though. Maybe it gets worse.
22nd, 2018, a high-ranking cop in Mexico was ambushed and brutally executed. What's unsettling was that her death was in fact a direct message from the cartel she once worked for.
Of course.
Florencia La Comandante Martinez
Wait,
was a
that she once worked for?
Mexican cop who served in the rank of commander or comandante, a high-ranking position in the municipal police of Nuevo Laredo, a border city in Tamaulipas, Mexico, where cartel influence runs deep. Now, she was suspected of using her position to aid criminal enterprises, more specifically drug trafficking.
So that she could get a kickback,
she would
right?
reportedly provide protection, offer logistical support, maybe information, and would shield from investigations. She had deep ties in the criminal network, making her a key figure in corruption, as she was allegedly working secretly with the Zetas, one of Mexico's most violent criminal organizations. However, at some point things changed. She was either suspected of betraying the cartel, where loyalty is everything, maybe aligning with another group. Maybe she just tried to cut ties with the cartel she was involved with, and they saw her as a liability. But whatever the reason, the Zetas decided she had to go. Her execution was swift and calculated. She was ambushed and killed by sicarios in her vehicle, with her body dumped on the roadside, where authorities found it later, near the city of Nuevo Laredo. That sort of execution is common in Mexico, where cartels dispose the corrupt cops they're no longer using, usually carried out in a highly organized manner, showing the cartel's reach and willingness to eliminate those they believe are no longer loyal or a threat to their organization. However, they didn't know about her double life until after she died, which ended up confirming their long-standing suspicions.
Oh shit. Okay, so look, that one, it's a little less surprising, I would say, you know, because realistically, that's such a big thing. When it comes to corruption, especially with gangs, you don't jump into a gang and then just walk out scot-free. You get jumped in, you get jumped out. But when it comes to a cartel, you're not just jumping out, bro. It's not happening. You're dead. You're not getting out of a cartel. Especially if you're a police officer who has information and dirt on them, and you could just blackmail them, you could get them arrested. Like, no, bro. No, she's not very smart for doing whatever she did.
In December 2010, the only police officer in this cartel-infested dusty border town of Guadalupe, Chihuahua, was kidnapped from her home. Weeks later, her body was found in a remote area, burnt beyond recognition. That gruesome execution was a clear message from the violent world she was caught up in. At just 28 years old, Erica Gandara started out as a police dispatcher in northern Mexico, right in the heart of cartel territory, Guadalupe, about 5 kilometers away from the U.S. border and about 60 from Ciudad Juarez, the center of drug smuggling operations into the U.S. A year later, she's in charge of the entire force in Guadalupe, a small town of 9,000 near the violence-ridden Ciudad Juarez. But here's the catch. She was the only officer left. The other 12 she worked with had either been killed or had fled, unable to keep up with the brutal wave of drug-related violence. Initially, Gandara was seen as a dedicated, courageous officer, a hero, who held her post in a town where others had fled, and would be seen as their sole police officer. However, as time had passed, reports came out that she had had ties with organized crime and drug trafficking, as many other cops in the region have been known to either directly or indirectly be involved with cartels. In a place where law enforcement and cartels overlap, some are forced into uneasy alliances. Many reports say that she was providing protection, aiding in drug trafficking, or just helping the cartels cover up activities, and this involvement would have eventually led her to become a target. Gandara was believed to have been involved with the Juarez cartel. Now, Erica mysteriously disappeared in December 2010. She was reportedly kidnapped from her home, and now she's gone missing for almost a week. According to reports, a group of gunmen, about a dozen of them, set her house on fire and burned 2 cars outside. Since then, no one had seen or heard from her. Many people suspected the cartel. After they found her body sometime in January 2011 in a remote area, she was so badly burned it was almost unrecognizable. Her disappearance, with the gruesome nature of the killing, made it clear that the cartel might have been involved. At the time, the Juarez and Sinaloa cartels were locked in a bloody war, and Gandara was right in the middle of the chaos. Cops who get too close, whether friend or foe, often met violent ends. Gandara's fate became yet another example of how deadly the line between law enforcement and organized crime can be.
Yeah. You don't say. Bro, that's insane. The title says dirty female cops instantly killed in jail. I think one police officer actually went to jail, but none of them actually died in jail. They all died outside of jail. I don't know, man. This one was crazy. I did not expect it to be 6 dirty cops, man. If you're a cop, bro, stay on the good side of the law. If you're a dirty cop, you're probably gonna get caught eventually. It just happens to most dirty cops. If you did enjoy this reaction video, leave a like, comment, subscribe, because I need to get my numbers up, man. I'm gonna catch you on the next one. Take care.
I don't think this love for me. I don't think you the one for me. I don't think you see me when you fucking up all in your dream. I don't think you got trust for me. Just ain't what I see.